Sometimes making something new isn't about making something new at all, but is more a combination of two existing ideas to solve a problem. The rolling suitcase was invented by someone who combined having to travel a lot with a pusher pram. The printing press was a combination of a wine press and ink. And the car was a combination of a combustion engine and a horse. Wait, that one might not be right. Sometimes it's about combining two ideas in a creative way, and some of the best indie games do this all the time. It's actually a big reason why indies are my obsession lately, because they're authentically pushing creative boundaries as opposed to just repeating the same formula again and again and again.
Woo! Oh, close one. I thought I was playing the indie game for a second.
So, if you're looking for some inspiration, here are 5 lesser-known indies that combine ideas in clever ways. To Kill a God is an action roguelite set in a dark, mythological world where players are a young acolyte trapped in a death spiral. Your mission is to break free from this curse, battling waves of enemies and growing stronger with every run. The game's structure revolves around mission-based combat. You select missions that drop you into wave-based encounters reminiscent of games like Brotato. The combat is pretty satisfying, and the enemy variety keeps you on your toes, ensuring each mission feels dynamic and engaging. What really makes To Kill a God interesting is its clever blend of Path of Exile's skill tree and Slay the Spire's mission selection. They call it the skill map system, and it's a brilliant design. You see, in Slay the Spire, players navigate a branching map, selecting nodes that represent different encounters or rewards. Meanwhile, Path of Exile's skill tree, renowned for its complexity, lets players define their builds through a web of interconnected abilities. They are very different systems. But To Kill a God combines them, and it's got a ton of promise. When you select a node on the skill map, you're not just unlocking a new ability, you're actually selecting a mission where you must survive enemy waves to earn that upgrade. This combination adds the potential for quite a bit of depth and interest to the decision-making process. Instead of simply earning skill points to spend later, each choice has an extra element to it, as you're choosing what kind of gameplay you want to do in order to earn that upgrade. Of course, there are some problems with the way it's currently implemented. Players can sometimes find themselves in situations where they can't really select another node. I think this is because of how the skill map is procedurally generated. There's also some repetition of wave-based combat, which can start to feel monotonous over time. I'd probably look to find a way to connect the gameplay of a mission more deeply with the skill node you've selected, kinda more thematically. Really make that choice more impactful. However, these issues feel solvable, and given that the game is still really early in development, there's a lot of hope for it. Overall, To Kill a God stands as a fantastic example of merging mechanics from different games to create something really interesting. Micro-Civilization is this hybrid of incremental clicker mechanics and 4X strategy, where players are building and advancing their civilization from the Stone Age all the way to the modern era. You're the leader of a micro-empire, clicking your way through technological advancements, gathering resources, and managing a variety of crises, from literal fires to enemy attacks that threaten your civilization. What's particularly interesting about Micro-Civilization is how it keeps you involved with a bit more of an active clicker style. Unlike traditional idle games like Cookie Clicker, where progress happens passively, this game requires a lot more attention. You'll be picking research, doing hero management, and exploring new areas on a bigger map, meaning there's always something to do. Think of it more as a hands-on approach to the clicker genre, bringing in much more of that Civ-style gameplay, where your clicks and choices directly influence your path to the next era. One of the problems exposed by this combo is that the game kind of lacks mechanical depth, with decisions sometimes feeling repetitive rather than engaging, as they are in more traditional 4X games. The game can also become a bit monotonous over time, especially once the initial thrill of progression wears off. Despite these issues, Micro-Civilization is a shining example of attempting to combine the accessibility of clicker games with the grand nature of 4X strategy. It's a really polished experience for those who enjoy constant activity and the satisfaction of building a civilization from scratch. Cataclysmo is a super interesting strategic city builder and tower defense hybrid. The game's set in a post-apocalyptic world consumed by this lethal mist, where the remnants of humanity are making a final stand against the monstrous horrors. As the commander of this last bastion, your goal is to construct and fortify a stronghold that can withstand nightly attacks from relentless waves of enemies. What makes the game stand out is how its Lego-like building system combines with realistic physics. Players build walls, fortresses, and traps brick by brick, adding a really creative element to defense construction. This kind of level of detail is not really seen in most games like this. Integrating the physics here makes your construction way more interesting. If a wall collapses, it doesn't just fall and disappear. It can actually crush both your units and the incoming horrors. This can add a layer of strategy where if you're really clever, you can actually try to use this to your advantage. It's almost like chopping down trees in Valheim. The downside to this really detailed construction is that it can be pretty daunting for new players, and the physics engine, while adding that extra layer, can sometimes result in the feeling of being punished unfairly. Despite this, Cataclysmo is a fascinating experiment in combining city building with a physics-based tower defense. Witchfire is a dark fantasy first-person shooter set in this brutal world where witches are real. You're what they call a prayer, an undead witch hunter. By wielding a mix of firearms and arcane spells, you fight to turn the tide of a supernatural war between the church and the witches. What makes Witchfire stand out is how it borrows the punishing, skill-based combat reminiscent of Dark Souls and combines it with an extraction-style model, where you're trying to continually survive and complete runs in levels which have procedurally generated layouts of enemy encounters. Imagine Elden Ring, but instead of a massive, sprawling, static open world, you've got much smaller environments where your objectives change whenever you load in. Like Dark Souls, there's a relatively in-depth character customization in the form of stats, and you get to configure your character's loadout with spells and weapons however you choose. The gunplay feels a lot like Destiny's, offering some really satisfying and fluid shooting mechanics that are complemented by your spellcasting. This dual-wielding approach to combat allows players to mix and match styles, whether you prefer picking off enemies from a distance or using powerful spells to just kind of obliterate them up close. There really isn't much going wrong here, beyond just a lack of content, and given it's in early access, that's not an issue. If you're a fan of the theme and RPG elements of Dark Souls, and enjoy some of the light extraction gameplay, I highly recommend checking it out. Sometimes finding inspiration is about asking what most would think to be ridiculous. None Shall Intrude sat down and said, what if the player is the raid boss? And then they did it. What they came up with is a roguelite deck builder that turns the classic hero versus villain trope on its head. Set in yet another dark medieval fantasy world, the game puts you in the role of a powerful raid boss like Onyxia, defending your lair from raves of intrepid heroes. It's awesome, because instead of charging into dungeons, you're the one standing your ground, using your abilities to fight off increasingly formidable opponents. The game's core appeal is more than just the theme though. It's in how it combines deck-building mechanics with tile-based tactical combat. Each card in your deck does more than just cast spells or deal damage. It interacts with the environment. You can set traps or alter terrain, or summon damaging abilities to defeat the invading heroes. This makes positioning and understanding how to play the environment as important as the cards you play, adding a deeper layer of strategy to each encounter. Every encounter feels like you're using your resources to solve kind of new puzzles as you try to defeat each wave of enemies. It's really interesting. The biggest issue I had with it is that the difficulty curve can be pretty inconsistent. Early battles can feel really overly punishing, and the overall randomness of cards can kind of get frustrating. Still though, this unique twist on the traditional card battler formula and adding in the environmental element sets it up as a game with a lot of potential. These games all do a great job of combining ideas in interesting ways. I hope you found some inspiration. I've linked all the games I've shared here below in case you want to check them out as well. Is there a game you've discovered recently that combines ideas in a way that you found surprising? Are you building a game which combines ideas that maybe no one else has thought of? If so, let us know in the comments. It's right below the like and subscribe button. For now though, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.